Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope we're all well, and thank you very much for tuning in. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at Next Level Racing's Flight Simulator, Boeing Commercial and Military Editions. This product is a mid-range, dedicated home flight simulator setup, which affords the user many different configuration options for mounting hardware around a dedicated Boeing-inspired chair. There are three variants that Next Level Racing offer. The two that you see in this video, which are the Boeing Commercial and Military Editions, and a standard Next Level Racing option without the Boeing branding. The difference between the three is purely cosmetic, and each offer the same level of functionality, and whilst I can't speak for the standard edition firsthand, I would have to assume build quality too. It is compatible with a wide range of hardware from Thrustmaster, Logitech, Cytec, Honeycomb and more, according to the Next Level Racing website, and retails at £699 British pounds. Next Level Racing were kind enough to send me these out to review on the channel, and I've spent combined over a month with the two examples of the product. Any thoughts I give in this video will of course be my own. Alright, let's first talk about unboxing and the initial setup of the product. The product arrived in a very large box on a pallet weighing in at around 70 kilograms. This is a big package, and whilst I somehow managed to get it into my first floor apartment on my own, I highly recommend you have someone on hand to help with the delivery when it is scheduled to arrive. Unboxing the product, there are a ton of different components which were all very well packaged in bubble wrap, along with some components in a separate box inside the main box. Nothing arrived with any damage from transit and nothing was missing. After unboxing, there is a fairly involved process to construct the product. However, the manual is well written and can be accompanied with an equally well shot and presented video, making the construction relatively straightforward and can be completed in around 3 hours. Some parts of the install, such as adding the seat to the frame, can be a little tricky, so I recommend you take your time through these parts in order to avoid scratching any parts of the product. Having someone else on hand for certain stages like this is useful also. After building, I had a generous amount of fixings left over for expansion and alteration, if I so required at a later stage. For my initial build, I set up the flight simulator with my VKB Gladiator NXT joystick, Thrustmaster TCA throttle, and Thrustmaster T-Flight rudder pedals. I did also try with the keyboard mount, which is a great addition and feels very good. It's very sturdy, but it did not suit my setup, as I prefer my keyboard on my desk along with other peripherals I use for live streaming. Once built, it is a fairly large piece of equipment, but once positioned properly, it fit quite nicely into my relatively snug flight sim and stream room, which is about 2 meters by 4 meters in size. Next, let's talk about build quality. The frame is all metal and nicely finished in black. Every part has some decent weight to it and does not feel cheap or flimsy at all. With the various attachment points mounted on the frame, there is no wobble and everything feels very solid. All the fixtures and fittings are of a very good quality, and I was particularly impressed with small items like these thumb screws, which feel really great in the hand, very solid feeling. The feet used on the frame are of a nice quality too, with a little rubber insert, which I'd actually recommend pulling out if you're going to put this on carpet. It just helps you move it around a little easier if you need to in your room. These items could have easily been cheaped out on, but they haven't chose to do that. The seat is mostly a similar story. Once mounted, it feels very solid and does not wiggle or move in position. The finishing on the seat feels quite nice, with a faux leather finish across the back, and the seat has this lovely Boeing-esque furry material on the front of the commercial edition and a heavier green fabric on the military edition. There's a nice faux suede fabric along the sides of both seats too. I personally really like the look of both seats, but the green military edition looked great in my office, which has half green painted walls. And briefly, just talking about the looks, I do actually think both editions look very, very nice indeed, and are very nicely finished. From the Boeing branding to pops of colour on some of the supports, it's visually a very nice product. Certainly much more pleasing to the eye than other comparable products I've seen, in my opinion. The chair has a sliding mechanism which feels quite decent, but I wouldn't expect the same level of quality as the chair in your car, for example, for obvious reasons, but we'll talk a little more about adjustability in a little bit. The chair reclines too and even lays fully flat, really nice for those long haul flights. And the mechanism, again, here, it's okay. I do, however, feel like this is one of the weaker areas of the product. Similar to the sliding mechanism, the reclining mechanism is distinctly notchy and has a lot of tension in it. And whilst I've had no issues with the second example of this product I received, the initial example did have some issues here, which we'll talk about later on. So it does overall feel like a little bit of a weak point. Along with that, the plastics used here to cover the reclining mechanism, along with around the seatbelt holes in the back of the seat, does feel on the cheaper side when compared to the premium feel of the rest of the product. The other smaller accessories provided are a very good quality too. The seatbelt is really nice and has solid metal adjustment loops, and the buckle has a satisfying click to it. One thing I noticed having tried both the commercial and military versions of the product was the commercial version does appear to have a slightly heavier and more premium feeling material to the seatbelt, whereas the military version, while it still feels great, the material just feels a little lighter to me. Perhaps this is intentional to give more of a military feel somehow. There are also some really nice mouse mats provided too, which fit their intended components perfectly. A lumbar cushion is included too, which has a polyester cover and a zip on the back, and it doesn't feel particularly premium, but does the job nevertheless. Looking at adjustability next, I've already touched on this a little bit, but other than the adjustment in the chair, there are many different configurations you can use for your flight sim hardware. There is vertical, lateral, and tilt adjustment for every component that would require it, and I think most users won't have a problem adjusting everything to their liking. I haven't been able to test this with a yoke as I don't use one, but considering the adjustment in the rest of the product, I doubt you'd have any difficulty here. To give an example, in my particular setup, I decided to forego the installation of the so-called cross member, which you can see fitted here. Intended for use with a military flight stick setup which would go between your legs, this allowed me to mount my joystick and throttle quadrant just a little bit further forward. But even if I wanted to have the cross member installed, I could have still positioned the seat further back along with the rudder pedals to allow for the same positioning. So definitely lots of flexibility to work with here. And when you're building it, some of the parts that are noted in the tutorial are not necessarily 100% required. You can get a little bit creative with things. One thing that might be worth considering, however, is that the options available here are really just for flight controls and a keyboard and mouse. So if you use radio panels, an external FMS, Stream Deck, an MCP, or anything similar, you will either have to get even more creative with the options or just simply settle for having these on another work surface nearby. If you have any questions about adjustability, please do feel free to let me know down in the comments. Next, let's talk about the flight simulator in practice and how comfortable it is. Like I say, I've been using this now for over a month, and I do really think in practice, this is where the product really comes into its own. Getting into the seat and putting the seatbelt on as you're about to start a flight is really quite a cool experience. As much as a seatbelt is definitely not something that is required to fly a flight simulator at home, and something I didn't think I would actually use on the product, Putting it on as you start pushback and taking it off upon reaching flight level 100 actually really adds to the level of immersion in your flight sim. Having all of your controls positioned in a logical way where they're always going to be located in the same position every time you set up for your simming is really nice too. It feels like you're sitting in an actual cockpit rather than at a desk with some flight controls. Coming from having my flight controls on the desk, which regularly got moved around, I am convinced that the consistency in positioning has improved some of the nuance in my muscle memory, and my landings do appear to have become more consistent as a result. Further, as someone who does not own a yoke, having the joystick mounted lower down is a far more ergonomic and natural position for the arm, which again I attribute to my improved consistency in landings. Airbus have their side sticks mounted in a similar way in the real aircraft, and as I mainly fly Airbus aircraft, I was pleased to be able to replicate this positioning with this product, something that is not possible with your controls on a desk. In terms of comfort, I found the seat just as comfortable as my previous office chair, which was the IKEA Marcus for reference, with the added bonus of being able to fully recline during those long flights. If you're like me though and like to adjust your position a lot whilst you're sat in your seat, I often cross my legs when sat at my computer. You have to be a little more careful when sat in this flight simulator due to the close proximity of your controls to your knees. If you're coming from a desk and chair setup like me, you may also notice legroom and space for your feet is reduced slightly, again due to the proximity of the flight controls, but also because of the frame that runs across the floor to the rudder pedals. This is something you do get used to, however. Over longer periods of time, the seat can become a little uncomfortable, but the same can be said for pretty much any other office chair I've tried, and the same even goes for my car. That being said, taking regular breaks as one should do when sat in front of a computer, this is not an issue at all. And lastly, let's talk about a few issues I mentioned briefly earlier on. So the initial example I received of this product, I found one fairly major functionality issue. The so-called crossmember that is used for attaching a combat flight stick was essentially too short. There was no way I could attach this to the frame, and there was little to no flex in the frame to try and force it in place. A couple of smaller, mostly cosmetic issues I had was that the zip on the lumbar cushion was broken on arrival. Again, couldn't find any way to fix that without doing some unstitching and things like that, which I didn't want to do. And as previously mentioned, the reclining mechanism did have some looseness in it, along with being quite squeaky every time I leant back on the chair. So I spoke to Next Level Racing about these issues, and they promptly sent out a completely new product, allowing me to keep the previous one that had the faults. And whilst I'm not a customer as such, I think this says a lot about their customer service and willingness to put any potential issues right. So big tick for Next Level Racing on that department. The replacement I have had now for a couple of weeks, and none of these issues are present, so I think it's fair to say that was a one-off and not representative of any ongoing issues. So finally, what are my conclusions and recommendations? For an all-in-one flight simulator solution, which is relatively easy to assemble and built to last, I think this is a really fantastic option. Though at near enough £700, this is definitely not a cheap product, but given its niche, I think the price is about right. Admittedly, this is my first experience with a product in this category, so I have no hands-on comparison experience, but purely price-wise, looking at others online, it looks like a very competitive product. I think the level of quality here is in line with the price being charged, and despite only having a 1-year limited warranty, it feels like a product that will last a very long time and will see you through many years of simming. And whilst I can't speak to that, obviously from experience, I've only had it for just over a month now. Given the price of this product, I think it's important not to forget how much use you will likely get out of a product and for what period of time. The adjustment and options for setup are fantastic, and I fail to think of many scenarios this would not suit. There are a couple of small areas of the build quality which are slightly disappointing given the price, but these are relatively minor points and are not really noticeable in day-to-day use. The overall looks of this product are great, even to the point where my partner said she actually liked the look of it despite not being into aviation or flight simming at all. She thought it looked very smart. But I think the thing that surprised me most about this product, and probably its biggest strength, is how much it improved the feeling of flight simming. This is difficult to describe and really only something you can experience by trying it for yourself, unfortunately. But the combination of increased immersion in the sim and the usability and consistency of the control placement coming from a desk setup are really, in my opinion, what makes this product shine. This is a product that was not on my radar and probably wouldn't have been for some time if Next Level Racing had not reached out to me for this review. At least in my current property where space is at a premium. But now I've tried it, I think I would find it very difficult to go back to my previous setup. And if you find yourself looking for that next way to level up your flight simming experience, then personally I would really recommend it. A big thank you goes out to Next Level Racing for sending this product out for review, and if you do decide to purchase this or any other of their products, you can now support the channel by using my affiliate link, which is in the video description below. This will take you over to the Next Level Racing website, and if you make a purchase, I will earn a small commission. I hope you have found this review useful, and if you have any other questions or if I've missed anything, please do let me know in the comments below, and I'll get back to every single one of you. We have some more reviews coming like this in the near future, so be sure to subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss those. A big shout out, of course, goes out to all of the channel members. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye bye for now.